What's up YouTube, and welcome to my long range FPV setup tour. As you've been regularly asking in the comments over the years about what gear am I using, how do I get such good range, how do I fly so fast, what tilt am I flying, and a billion other questions, this video is here to answer it all. I'm gonna show you what I'm using to fly in the mountains, as well as a few tips and personal opinions on what led me to these choices, to show you the actual reasoning behind it, and to hopefully guide you to select your own gear if you're getting started, or what could make your experience better while sending it long range if you're already an experienced pilot. I'm gonna clean up the desk now to focus on the ground gear first, and then we'll switch to the quads. So we're gonna start by the controller. Last year I switched from my good old and trusty Tango 2 to a Radio Master Boxer Crush, which is right there, right when it was released, because I've been flying ELRS 2.4 for a while on my smaller quads and Crossfire on my long range rigs, and it was about damn time to switch to ELRS 900 MHz for long range for price and performance reasons. While technically you could use 2.4 GHz for long range, and it did prove to perform really well with crazy distances reached at low output power, I'm still sticking to 900 MHz for two main reasons. 200 Hz is the max refresh rate on the ELRS 900 MHz, and even with my rather aggressive flight style, I don't need more. It simply doesn't matter that much, as you won't be doing crazy Mr. Steel 5-inch freestyle snappy moves. To put numbers on it, 200 Hz still offers sub 5 millisecond latency. If you fly HD, you already got over 30 milliseconds of video delay, so you'll notice it even less. I don't care about having long antennas on my long range rigs. Going 900 MHz means my antennas are about 3 times longer than 2.4 GHz antenna, which usually brings durability and placement concerns, but on the big 7-inch quads or wings, it literally doesn't matter, so this is not an issue at all. And last but not least, it physically has more range. This is quite controversial actually, because 2.4 GHz tends to bounce around where 900 does it a little less, but lower frequency physically means more penetration and more range. The two main downsides of 900 MHz being refresh rate and antenna size, which I really don't care about in this use case. It would be stupid not to go for the most overkill system for safety measures, especially when it's not more expensive than 2.4 GHz gear. Now back to the controller. I wish it was smaller. I definitely don't need such a large screen and a thumb, so I don't care about the grip. I did my best to get it as compact as possible with my internal 2.4 GHz antenna mode and my foldable 900 MHz antenna on the gyro module, but it's still really bulky in my opinion. All the mods that you're seeing there are available on my printables page for free if you want to try them out and print them out yourselves. At the moment, I'm really looking forward for a Tango 2 successor, dual frequency gamepad style controller from Radio Master, because I would ditch the Boxer pretty quickly in my opinion. Other than that, it really feels great in hand. It's just huge, but the AG01 gimbals are amazing and the switch positions are suiting me perfectly. I love that I don't have a freaking 4K Samsung smart fridge on the bottom of it.
Barbecue bacon burger.
I have a full gyro module where I can fit my Radio Master module on the back. It goes up to 1 watt and I'm just really happy about it overall. I've also got a Radio Master 6200 mAh 2S battery in there. The battery life in this thing lasts pretty much forever. I charge it like once a month or something like that. Just to give you an idea of my switch mapping as well, I don't have many features on my 7-inch quads, but just to keep it simple, I've got my arming switch over there, my buzzer is over there, and my return to home is over there. So the point is to have the return to home as accessible as possible. So when I'm flying, if I ever panic and I just grab it there, it's pretty straightforward. I have the turtle mode over there also. Hopefully I'll never have to use turtle mode on the 7-inch quad anyway, but it's there just because why not? And that's pretty much it. So 1 switch, 2 switch, 3 switch, 4 switches, and that's all I need for this quad. Now let's dive into my ELRS settings real quick. I've got my Radio Master Bandit Micro plugged on the back here, and we'll read settings through the Luro script. So first setting is the packet rate. I fly 100 Hz in the great majority of situations because it still feels reasonably snappy, and it's overall a good middle ground between range and latency. I do bump it up to 200 Hz when the spot is really close, like less than 1.5 kilometers, but in most cases 100 Hz is my way to go. Telemetry ratio, I leave it to standard. Switch mode and link mode, I also leave it to wide and normal, which are the stock settings. Model match, I don't use this feature either. And there comes the TX power. I have it set to 1000 milliwatt, dynamic set to dynamic, so on. You can either turn it off or on. I used to fly at fixed power for years, especially back when I was flying Crossfire, but after going through the ELRS documentation about dynamic power, it seemed like a safe and well implemented feature, so I gave it a shot and it's been working like a charm so far. I've added my TX power to the OSD and it saves a bunch of battery life on the controller, and it does bump up instantly when I get in tricky situation behind rocks, which is honestly what I was scared about the most, and I would recommend it. I haven't seen any downsides to it, and I'm not scared to bump it all the way to 1000 milliwatt anymore because it's sitting at 100 milliwatt, which is the minimum of this module most of the time because it doesn't need it. And that's pretty much it for the ELRS settings actually. It's pretty simple. Now on to the goggles. I'm not gonna go through the reasons of why I'm flying long range using analog in this video, but I'm flying analog because it's the most reliable, widely available, cheapest protocol with the best range on the market to this day and with fixed ultra low latency. If you don't agree with that, you just haven't tried high-end analog. After flying the Fat Shark HDO2 since I started FPV in 2019, I switched to the Orca V2s about 2 years ago because they're just better in every way. They have great OS, outstanding DVR, 60 FPS, quiet dual fans on top. They're lightweight and they just work flawlessly for me. I want something that boots in 3 seconds and freaking works, and the Orcas deliver. Video receiver. On these I've got a rapid fire, also proven to be one of the best analog VRx out there, if not the best, on which I'm running different antennas depending on the scenario. For my long range use case, I'm using a relatively long Omni antenna on top and then a TrueRC X2R patch. The patch is handling 99% of the signal reception when I'm flying far in the distance, and the beam of this patch is actually quite wide, so it allows me to do minimal head angle adjustment mid-flight. If you position it like this, it's wider than it is tall, and it's actually very convenient. Remember that a patch antenna max range is all about compromises. The more range you get, the more narrow the beam is. At 13 dBi, the X2R is a great sweet spot. This is also a TrueRC antenna, and it's also 5.8 GHz, but the gain is 17 dB, and this is actually super narrow, so it wouldn't be convenient to have this on the goggles, because the beam is basically, you have to be laser focused on the quad. It makes much more sense to have this on the ground station than on the goggles. I've pushed this exact setup up to 15 kilometers out with the wings and a 1.6 watt VTx. I'm rarely pushing past 5 kilometers when I fly in the mountains with the 7-inch quads, so this is working like a charm and it's actually way overkill, which is exactly what I need in this situation. One cool experiment that flying analog allows you to do is to figure out your patch beam width mid-flight by just looking around. So you basically just fly like this. Let's say your quad is over there in the distance. You can literally turn your head like this until the signal starts dropping, and then you'll be able to figure out exactly what is the coverage of your patch antenna without risking any freezes or black screen, because you can just turn your head back to your quad and that's it. Yeah, just be aware that moving my head mid-flight to maximize signal reception is actually something that I do every single flight, because you're never going to be perfectly aligned by the time you put your quad on the ground, go sit somewhere or stand. You're obviously going to move around, and yeah, you actually have to be actively looking for the signal in flight, which is why analog is super convenient for this through the glitches. Now into the quadcopters. First thing first, why do I have two? As a backup, obviously I started with just one, which was my white one here on the left, but as I gained skills and went on proper FPV mountain surfing road trips, I quickly realized that I would need a backup in case I lose or break one. You don't want to be out there camping in the mountains hours away from home and cut a trip short because you broke a quad and you don't have anything else to fix it, or just because you lost one in a non-accessible area. Different KV. We'll go through it in a minute when I'll talk about my motor choices, but since I had to build a second quad, I would rather have them being slightly different and optimized for two use cases, which is the way I went for. Why 7-inch and not 6, 8 or 10? In my opinion, and after trying all of them, 7-inch is just the sweet spot between agility and speed for my use case, which is mountain surfing under 5 to 6 kilometers. Yes, 10-inch is faster and it can carry heavier batteries for a longer time, but it's not nearly as agile and it literally starts to get too big to send it in tight canyon dives. And yes, 6-inch is agile, but like a 5-inch, you'll quickly get restricted by flight time. 7-inch really meets the best of both worlds, and that's the way I went for. Now we'll go through these quads component by component, and then I'll go through the differences between them too. Let's talk about the frame. Over the years, I've tried everything from skinny AliExpress extended 7-inch frames to beefy dead cats like the Super G+. These experiences led me to come up with my own frame, crafted for my flight style, the Kailua 7-inch. Unlike the Caillou Mini that I personally designed from scratch, the Kailua is the product of months of work with the Caillou team based on my spec requirements and testers' feedback. I love the stability and agility brought by the Squished X on my AliExpress 7-inch frames, but the arms were way too skinny to handle aggressive tune or slightly unbalanced propellers, and I loved the deck room that I had on the Super G+, but a dead cat behaves really bad on sharp moves. Based on these main points, the Kailua 7-inch was conceived around my needs and is obviously my best pick to date, objectively. It comes in with a wide collection of 3D prints as well, featuring optimal placements for every component, like receiver on the front far away from the RF noise transmitted by the VTx, crossed beams receiver antennas on the front, multiple camera and VTx mount options optimized for low weight and maximum cooling. The whole point of this project is that whether you're new into long range or an experimented builder, you don't need to worry about anything if you just build it as advised and trust the process. There is a lot of documentation on the KU 7-inch if you go to the KU Frames website, and there is basically all you need to ever know when you build a 7-inch quad, and then a bunch of build tips, whether you want to build it using DJI or analog, the best protocol out there, guys, the best one. You've also got build videos and a bunch of help to pick your components. So yeah, just go ahead and have a look at this if you're curious about building on this specific frame. Now back to the video. One build got 1500 kV motors and the other got 1300 kV motors. Why? 1300 kV is efficient, 1500 kV has more punch, but sucks the shit out of batteries. But it's much more fun though. I switch between the two depending on how far the peak is and on how aggressively I'm planning to fly, but usually the 1300 kV build is my chill lithium-ion cruising build, and the 1500 kV one is my lipo proper mountain shredding build. Now don't get me wrong, both quads absolutely rip. 1300 kV build is far from flying like a DJI Avata. We're probably talking about a 10% efficiency difference between the two, even if you push it, but it's nothing dramatic, so don't overthink that choice too much and just prioritize the flight style that you're gonna go for the most. You can still do lithium-ion cruising with a high 1500 kV build and dive canyons with a 1300 kV builds, as these videos shows. So yeah, it's just a suggestion, but you're free to do whatever you want in the end, and it's not that big of a difference. Now coming to the stack, honestly, I took whatever I had laying around in my drawers from the 5-inch quads. Both are running F7 FCs. One is a Mamba, the other is a Hobby Wing. Both are running Betaflight 4.3.2 because I'm familiar with every feature of this version. They're tuned properly and I don't want to do it all over again. Even though Betaflight 4.4 got much better return to home handling, I'm just too lazy. Chasing version after version would be extremely time consuming, and considering all the features being added week after week, I think long range platforms isn't the kind of quads you want to experiment with, so I'm sticking to what works and I just fly it as it is. Both ESCs are rated for 65 amps and they're running BL Heli 32. One is a Mamba F65 and the other is a Hobby Wing X rotor. But again, I would be completely okay with running Blue Jay or AM32. It's just what was available back then when I got them. And even though it's the center of the build, I don't think the stack choice matters much in your ability to fly good. Now on to the VTX. One of the key elements of the build, especially when you fly long range like this at a distance. Both builds are running a Resh Tank Solo 1.6 watts. I've been flying with it for years. I have some in quadcopters, in planes, in gliders, and I flew for hours and dozens of kilometers out without any surprises. There are other options for sure, like the TBS Unify Pro 32, but again, I tend to stick to what works when I'm doing risky stuff. Anything between 800 milliwatt and 1600 milliwatt is plenty enough for mountain surfing. Don't get fooled by Chinese marketing and microwave VTX built for Ukraine, blasting 2 watts or 5 watts or even 10 watts. On paper, it looks like you're gonna get infinite range, but in reality, the power output to range ratio is logarithmic. So if you double the power, you'll get only 50% more range, and past 1.6 watt, you're really just pulling on the electronics and generating heat for nothing, and they tend to generate noise on the feed. So getting a high gain patch antenna is definitely a much smarter way to effectively double your range, for example, while still maintaining a crystal clear VTX feed. Now onto the VTx antenna. You want it sticking away from the quad as much as possible to avoid dead zones, especially when you have your battery in the way. When we fly 7-inch, we tend to fly big batteries and they do get in the way if you have a short antenna. You want it to be away from it because it's gonna expose it to a huge dead zone if you fly towards yourself. I'm not a big fan of crazy expensive antennas like the Lumenier Double AX2 because the receiving gears matters a lot more in terms of signal quality, and because it's literally the first thing that'll break if you crash, considering how exposed it is on the quad. Get something simple like a sub 20 euro Truer C core like I have here. It's 150 millimeter long. You don't want to go too long either, otherwise it's gonna wiggle and it's gonna cause other issues with the PID loop. When I'm waiting for the comments about the antenna length, like that's what she said. Now onto the camera. These two builds are running Foxeer Predator 5, not because they're the best, but because I had them two laying around from back when I was flying the Apex with 21mm wide side plates. They still look really good to this day, but if I was to build it from scratch, I would probably get a Ratel 2 like on my 5-inch builds. They're mounted on fixed tilt 3D prints, just to make sure I've got a solid 30 degree whatever happens, and my DJI Action 2 mount on the top is also fixed at 30 degree. A quick note on the action camera mounts also while we're at it. Don't go with variable tilt. It's a lot better to get a solid fixed tilt mount. It's much more tolerant to vibrations, and if you have jello on your footage and you're using a variable tilt mount, just don't look any further and print a fixed one. I'm using a DJI Action 2 mostly because of the ultra-wide FOV and the ultra-low weight. Dynamic range is actually worse than a GoPro, but man, this thing is 52 gram. That's like 1/3 of the weight of a GoPro Hero 12, and you definitely feel the difference in flight. The max FOV is 155 degrees. I fly full frame nose tab to get the best out of it, and the sense of speed you get from it is actually awesome. My 3D printed mounts fits the TBS and the filters. I'm using 4, 8 and 16, and I switch between them according to the light. I try to keep my shutter between 1 and 30 all the way to 1 and 120. I don't use the rule of the dual frame rate thing. I just go by feeling, and I just go by what looks the best to me. I don't want too much blur, but I don't want no blur at all either. And realistically, it's impossible to stick to the same shutter setting all the time because the light is always changing and you're always gonna be between 2 ND filters. So yeah, basically somewhere around 160, but there is no fixed rule. I used to fly GoPros a few years back, and the workflow using this little battery box to manage the storage and recharge the Action 2 worried me quite a bit at first. But it turns out the ability to quickly back up on the spot without having to carry around SD cards is an absolute game changer. I back up my footage between almost every pack, and that way I have zero worries about losing my previous shot, and I can confidently smash my quad on the mountain. Now onto the receiver. As explained before, it's sitting on the front to avoid RF noise from the VTX as much as possible. On my freestyle quads, I literally have it on top of the VTX, but on my long range builds with high power VTX and so much room on the frame, it makes sense to build it as optimized as possible and to use that space by throwing it on the front. The antennas needs to be on the front anyway, as you'll see it in a minute, so having it there is definitely the way to go. They're also crossed beam as to cancel the dead zones from one another, and what you're seeing on my quads is basically the best placement you can ever work on for this kind of antennas on a quadcopter. I'll let Jordan explain it on this gem of a video by Stinger Swarm.
The rule of thumb with the Immortal T at least is you want it vertical optimally, but if you have to do it horizontal, put it on the front, because when you're flying away from yourself, you'll have like mildly bad control, but it will definitely work on the way home. And you don't want to fly out somewhere and then turn around and fail safe.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's
So this to me, this is bad.
This is bad. This is
This
worse.
is worse.
But this is best.
And this is best.
Yeah.
Like that.
Okay.
And then
yeah.
if this was even higher, so that it's like, because right now this
I've
you'll
seen
get a
some that
shadow.
incorporate it into the GoPro mount.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To get it up there.
That's good, except for the GoPro cameras tend to be pretty noisy.
Gotcha.
So you want to at least have it like a few centimeters away. But like we did a couple tests where just having this antenna, like let's slide it back here, and having the tips touching the arm was significantly worse than just a centimeter up.
Dang.
Just because of the carbon attenuating the antenna a bit. So it's really just have your link quality on your OSD and pay attention to it.
I'm using Beta FPV 915 MHz diversity receiver on both, so ELRS, just because they were available and cheap when I bought them, but I'm highly confident you will get good results out of Radio Master or Happy Model stuff, or whatever other big FPV brand you can find. They're pretty much all the same anyway, as long as it's ELRS and compatible with your frequency. Quick note on the diversity as well, the dual antenna setup. I flew Crossfire for years with single antenna receivers with a vertically oriented antenna, and as you can see on my quads, I still have the stock Crossfire antenna in there. I didn't swap it because it's the same frequency, and I was doing so just because I didn't want to spend €60 on a receiver, and it worked like a charm. With my flight style, I'm rarely ever pushing it past 5 kilometers, and I've always got great LQ and RSSI at 500 milliwatts, so diversity is sort of overkill, but at the price point of ELRS receivers, it was $25 for these diversity ones. You might as well just play it extra safe and go for it. Same philosophy than for the 2.4 GHz versus 0.9 GHz choice. If it's overkill but it's the same price, just go for it and don't think twice. No quads left behind. The measures to recover a drone should be taken before actually crashing it. Fingers crossed, but to this day I haven't left a single quad behind. I did crash a bit, definitely, both because of technical issues and skill issues. but I've always managed to locate and hike back to them and bring them home safely. Here's a few things you need to make sure you've got ready before sending it in the mountains. GPS. Mine's are good old BN220. It's $9 on AliExpress and it works like a charm. You don't need a crazy ass €50 GPS to save your quad. I wouldn't put more than $20 in these for my use case. You need the GPS for two main reasons. The return to home, which is the obvious one. Make sure to set it up properly on Betaflight. It has improved a lot in the latest releases. It doesn't need a magnetometer to be reliable enough, and there's plenty of guides online explaining each and every variable in the configurator and to adjust it to your quad. Test it in real life multiple times to get it dialed in. It's gonna save your ass when you'll actually need it, and you'll be so thankful that you did this before. And the second point is the telemetry. If your return to home failed, or if you just straight up crashed, this is the best way to recover the last transmitted GPS coordinates and to get ready for the hike. Telemetry in most situations penetrates and go further than the video feed, so even if you have a DVR, it's a good reflex to have the telemetry, because if your quad is stuck on the ground, you might have the telemetry but not the video, and then you'll get a more accurate position. To set up the telemetry, you just need to tick it on Betaflight, and then the rest is done through HTX or OpenTX on your controller. Here is two things that you need to make sure you've set up regarding the telemetry. First thing first, it needs to be displayed with a telemetry screen for live access to it. If you unplug the quad, it's gonna keep displaying the last packet received, and then you can take a photo of it or memorize it, and then you can enter the coordinates on Google Map and go for the hike, and then you should log them as a backup as well. If everything else fails, you can log it as a CSV file at a given interval. I'm using 1 second on mine, and the files are light enough to just let it run forever. In my case, I'm flying 900 MHz for everything long range and 2.4 GHz for everything else, so I simply have it on only on the 900 MHz model. That way, if you crash but somehow cannot take a photo of your screen because you don't have your phone, or if your controller battery died mid-air, or if you just forgot about it and turned off your controller, you won't lose this precious last data from the GPS coordinates. Outside of a recovery scenario, telemetry is actually super useful to display data like the number of satellites logged, the antenna RSSI, the battery voltage, and I use them as a quick pre-flight checklist actually before every flight. Before putting my goggles on, you can check at a glance whether you've got a broken receiver antenna or plugged an empty battery and avoid simple mistakes. And then you've got the autonomous buzzer. This is the last piece of the puzzle. It's gonna allow you to hear the quad from a distance to finish the work after you walked close enough thanks to the GPS coordinates that you've got earlier.
Le compte de ses morts, il est juste là. Putain de merde.
For the beginners out there, the autonomous buzzer is basically a buzzer with its own 1S battery, and it's gonna trigger and beep even after the quadcopter battery is unplugged, eject, or just drained in the wild. The VFly Finder 2 is rated for more than 24 hours of autonomous beeping, and it's the one I'm using for both. It's quite cheap and it saved my quads more than once, and I can guarantee that it does actually beep all the way to 24 hours. Thank God. DVR. I have it rolling all the time. It costs nothing, and if your GPS or receiver fails, you'll have yet another way to figure out where your quad is. Remember, when it comes to long range, there is never enough backups, and this one is probably the easiest one to set up as it's well integrated in most goggles. On the Orcas, I have it as auto recording, and it just deletes the oldest files and overwrites on the new ones, and that way I'm sure that I always have the DVR rolling and recording. Conformal coating. That's a question that I'm being asked fairly often, as I happen to fly in humid, snowy environments or through clouds from time to time. Are my quads conformal coated? The answer is they're not, but they should. I'm just lazy. I've built these quads years ago and I'm just not willing to disassemble them to coat them as it is. I fly most of the time in completely dry environment in the summer and under good weather, but if I was to build a new quad from scratch, I would definitely coat them for the sake of safety, and again because it's cheap. Electronics are reasonably tolerant, as you can see in the places I've flown, but coating just removes any sort of doubts or worries in the rapidly changing mountain weather. The B7000 glue is an excellent way to make your gear at least a lot more splash proof than it is without anything, so I would still recommend doing it. The batteries. This on its own could be worth a dedicated video altogether, because 7-inch is such a flexible platform. You can carry a wide range of battery depending on the flight style you're aiming for. If you've watched this video until then, I'm guessing you're mostly interested in my flight style, aka aggressive mountain surfing. So here's all of the batteries that I own and for which scenarios do I prefer each. First thing first, on the left we've got LiPos. Quick note about the discharge rate, which is C rating, as it's a common confusion that I'm seeing in the comments. Your C rating gives you the max battery output current in amps, and it's calculated by multiplying it by the capacity in amp hour. So on a 7-inch quad pulling full throttle with a 2806 1500 kV motor, you're gonna be pulling around 150 amps total for the 4 motors, with smaller capacities like 6S 1300. A 100C pack is gonna output 130 amps if you do the multiplication. So you do need a high C rating to match the need of your quadcopter. But on a much bigger pack, like a 4000 milliamp LiPo, a 100C rating means that you can output 400 amps, and that's like 3 times more than you'll ever need. And a high C rating often has an impact on weight and price, so don't go overkill. For example, if you do the math, 200 amps output can be achieved with a 4000 milliamp hour 50C only pack. We're used to seeing crazy high numbers on freestyle packs like 120, 150C because they're low capacity and they need it. So seeing me flying so fast with 55C packs often surprises people, but you can literally pull as much current out of a lower C rated pack if the capacity is proportionally larger. Now back to the LiPos options. On the left I've got the small ones. I've got plenty of them for my smaller 5-inch freestyle quads, so it deserves to be mentioned. But on the 7-inch, the flight time that you'll get out of these is actually very small. We are talking sub 4 minutes, which is enough to send it like 2 kilometers out if you're being careful. But even if your quad will be so light it's gonna fly like a rocket, it's not the ones that I use the most, as bigger ones got much more range and flight time potential. On to the next one, we've got the 6S 2200 milliamp hour 55C from CNHL. I can get about 5 to 6 minutes of flight times on these. It's a great sweet spot between weight and flight time. You can definitely start to feel the weight of anything above this. You can fly around while remaining very agile with these, and it's a pretty cool compromise for spots, I would say under 2 kilometers, where you can keep it light while having enough flight times on the ridge. Next one I've got are the 3300 milliamp hour 40C. Usually I get about 7 to 8 minutes flight time out of them. It's my favorite pick to date. They've got plenty enough flight time to hit ridges up to 4 kilometers out. It has great agility for hardcore free rides, and I just really love them, and that's what I'm flying on the great majority of my flights. And then on the category above we've got 6S 3700 milliamp hour. Again, these are 40C, I'll let you do the math. This is a great combo for high-speed cruising. You'll definitely feel the weight of it if you freestyle around a bit, but the distances that you can cover at high speed with them are really cool. So they're really like fast cruising batteries, and you can get from 9 to 10 minutes of flight times with them. And I've done 5 to 6 kilometers with them, no problem. Now into the lithium-ion batteries. I've got 4 of them. All of them are 6S1P 21700. These two on the left are running Molicel P42A cells, and these on the right are running EV40PL cells. So all of them are 4000 milliamp hour. This one is given at 45 amps discharge, and these one are 70. I've built this very recently, and I've done only 1 or 2 road trips with them, and it's really good. Back in the days, lithium ion were solely used for chill cruising and cinematic shots. You couldn't go hard on the throttle, but it's becoming less and less of a thing with modern cells and chemistry. The discharge rates are going higher and higher as the technology improves, and I'm honestly pretty confident throwing these around, and they're almost at the same level as my 3300 milliamp hour LiPo packs, but lighter and with more capacity. I definitely wouldn't say the same of the older cells that I've got on the left, so it's definitely moving in the right direction, and I'll definitely use all of my LiPos until they die, but it's really a good option to have in the collection, because who the hell doesn't want more range, more flight time for the same weight? I believe in 2 to 3 years this is gonna be the way, and we'll all ditch the LiPos for long range.